This is going to be my most biased review. I first heard the Orchestra Lite in July at CanJam London at the Linsol table. It was also there where I had the pleasure of meeting the CEO of Linsol, who immediately offered me a Kiwi Ears Orchestra Lite after I experienced a truly jaw-dropping moment. So many thanks to Linsol for providing this review sample. At around $250, the Orchestra Lite takes us through a masterclass in its design philosophy. The fairly large resin shells are molded to fit most of the inner ear shape, including some unusually large 6mm nozzles. Despite the size and shape, they fit my ears perfectly, which was a world first for me. Typically, the only IEM shape that has previously fit my ears well were the universal sideways bullet shape of Shure and modern Sennheiser IEMs. So for me to experience something like a custom fit in a stock form was magical. The shells are all finished with individual resin faceplates that all sport identical Kiwi Ears logos in front of a unique swirling pattern that tastefully catches the light without being too garish or tacky. I think it's very cool that even at this price, I'm receiving a unique product. This is usually the kind of individuality you can only expect from products with unique wood grain or much higher-end customized resin headphones. The transparent resin of the shells also makes it possible to admire the arrangement of the 8 balanced armature drivers, the craftsmanship of the intricate soldering work on the passive crossover, and the 3 tubes leading from the drivers to the end of the nozzle. The cable is by far among the best I have ever used. The 4-core weave is thicker than average but is extremely lightweight, resists tangling, and is much easier to untangle than other cables. The slider, after the Y-split, has the correct amount of friction and does not slide around on its own. The extra sheath around the earhook part of the cable is almost completely invisible, completing the clean, minimal design. Continuing on the theme of minimalism, the carry case is the functional minimal, with maximum practicality. It appears to be a cheap generic case, but it is in fact a quite hard case covered in a very hard-wearing synthetic weave. It is also on the thinner side, and more in line with the extremely functional cases such as those provided by Shure with their IEMs, and just like with the Shure case, it makes these a very easy 4-finger wind to fit the cable inside. I also don't mind that they appear to be skimping on accessories, because I strongly believe most of the cost goes directly into the engineering and sound quality of the IEMs. In the box, Kiwi Ears has also made the extra effort of providing 3 different types of silicone tips. A recurring theme in many IEM reviews I've noticed is that stock tips aren't always enough to ensure a perfect fit, so I'm very happy to see that a company has noticed this and made an extra effort to maximize the chance of customer satisfaction. In my case, out of the 3 sets provided, I got a significantly better fit with the grey tips with the thicker red bores. So those are the tips my fit and sound impressions are based on. Firstly, take a moment to imagine my disbelief at having, for the first time in my life, put in IEMs that fit my ears perfectly. Then add one more layer to that. Turning on the music for the first time, my immediate feeling was as though these were made for me. Your mileage may vary, but for me personally, the tuning of these IEMs is just perfect. A linear bass that doesn't bleed into the mids or bloat, a clear separation of upper bass and lower mids between 200 and 700 Hz to eliminate any chance of bloat, a touch of mid-range emphasis at 1 to 2 kHz so nothing feels like it's scooped out or in the background. The dip between most of the upper mids eliminates any chance of glare or shoutiness and increases psychological soundstage. And finally, a perfectly tuned and fully extended treble. This is very similar to the kind of frequency response I look for in full-sized high-end headphones, yet here it is, in the only IEM that has ever correctly fit my ears. forget non-bias in this review. There is simply no way for me to remain objective because I feel nothing but pure audio bliss every time I use the Orchestra Lite. Okay, let's at least try to cover the less tangible aspects. Imaging and staging are accurate, but on the whole, it's not a huge soundstage. Of course, with IEMs, it rarely is, and at the very least, the stereo image in my head is not diffused or confused, but don't expect the sound to appear to leave the space between your ears. Simply put, it is very accurate. Not only that, but it has also brought some recordings to life in a way I have not often heard previously, specifically some live recordings, which can sound flat and lifeless on other IEMs or even full-size headphones. And the music was not just played, but performed by the Orchestra Lite. When it comes to detail, texture and separation, all 16 balanced armature drivers are doing things I've come to expect from certain manufacturers with IEMs costing at least double. In some cases, up to 6 times as much. And even better than some in-ear monitors I won't mention the name of, up to 12 times the price. I found that the IEM market is a bit of a wild west in that regard. The discrepancy between price and objective acoustic performance is inconsistent at best and sporadic at worst. Here, the objective value against cost is far beyond satisfactory. There is especially such a clear distinction between bass and treble, which is something many larger single transducers in full-size headphones fail to achieve sometimes. The timbre, being on the slightly warmer side of neutral, gives such a natural presentation that is so very much unlike the typical BA timbre you might expect from much cheaper single or double BA IEMs, that sometimes I forget that I'm even using in-ear monitors. To keep my descriptions as simple as possible, bass is fast, clean, a touch warm, and pumps out just enough slam and volume for any genre. Mids are a touch on the colder side, with some male vocals sounding like they're coming through smaller bookshelf speakers, but it doesn't sound incorrect or distasteful. Treble is never piercing, but is fully articulate, with a timbre that is neither splashy or shimmery. It's just ever present. In a word, these sound natural. To go further, they are detailed, they scale well, and excel at vocal and classical music. To be clear, I think these are genre masters, but when you throw some really well-recorded live, orchestral, or film music, it can be really quite breathtaking. Everything is presented with an authority and smoothness you might only be able to find in something like a high-end, full-sized planar headphone. Of course, let's rein in the hyperbole for a second. I need to remind myself that these are not full-sized headphones, and shouldn't be compared with them directly. Which is what I'd like to say as an objective reviewer, but when comparing these directly to my modified Hi-Fi Man HE500, the similarities in tone and detail is astonishing. Especially for some older recordings, just add 3 or 4 decibels of bass boost to the Orchestra Lite, and it'll give them similar amounts of bass authority, and the sound also appears to scale up, which is something I can recommend for almost any owner or future owner of the Orchestra Lite. There is only one singular aspect of the Orchestra Lite that I consider negative, and it is simultaneously a build and sound issue. The resin shells have no vents. This means when you put them in your ears, you need to practice carefully adjusting the pressure inside your ear canal. Too much air pressure will reduce the bass response and may also cause some discomfort. After a few weeks, I've got quite good at relieving that pressure by pressing the nozzles against the top of my ear canals and gently releasing them, making a very balanced pressure feeling. Despite this, there is, however, a very strong redeeming factor here. This perfect bass seal with no venting also has the added effect of making these one of the best passive isolations I've ever heard in a normal IEM without foam tips, so I've been able to use these at comfortable volumes on the train and bus without having to adjust the volume. Of course, the isolation is not perfect either, so when I'm outdoors I still prefer to add a few decibels of bass boost, but at home or the office, the stock tuning is basically perfect. Here's the catch. The Kiwi Ears Orchestra Lite does not follow the current meta or the target squiggly line. The whole point of that target is to please the most ears possible, but the reality is that there are outliers whose ears do not conform to that average. I believe I am one such outlier. In this case, I consider myself fortunate to have found where my ears lie on the scale and what kind of tuning sounds neutral to me, or at least similar to good, neutralish, full-sized headphones. So if these fit your ears anywhere as well as they do in mine, and if you love natural sounding, neutral warm headphones like the Sennheiser HD650, the Altier Cal 1H, or Audeze LCD-X, there's a very decent chance you're going to absolutely love these. The Kiwi Ears Orchestra Lite is one of my favorite things I've ever heard, and going forward, they are my benchmark for all IEMs. With this being a permanent part of the collection, it's going to be very challenging for some companies to convince me of their justifications for their often bewildering prices. So now I'm just going to compare some of my other IEMs to the Kiwi Ears Orchestra Lite in no particular order. So let's start. Yeah, so whereas these sound sort of full-bodied and almost three-dimensional in their staging, these are very one-dimensional by comparison. So I did like these, but as I keep getting better and better in monitors, these fall behind. Obviously, they're a lot cheaper, so it does make a huge difference there, but tuning's still not bad. A little bit too much energy up top. The timbre is kind of splashy, so that needs at least some EQ, but yeah, they're quite far apart. Let's continue. Interesting. So yeah, these are clearly a step above these, no doubt. Obviously not near these, but these are doing some really nice things for their size and price. Yeah, the staging, it's bigger, but there's less power, or less authority in the sound, and I think that's because, well, they've done this huge venting system to make sure that these they never fatigue. These are making sure that there's that pressure that you feel in your ears is eliminated as much as possible. So of course these are not as comfortable over time for sound or comfort because of just the sound pressure levels. So yeah, these still have their niche for sure. Tuning is a tiny bit more, it's more sparkly, it's more treble heavy. Could be bass heavier, so a little bit of EQ goes a long way with these. Yeah, still quite good ones, like those. Let's continue. Oh dear, that's quite a disappointment from JVC. These obviously do need a lot more equalization. I need to bring down the whole pinner gain just to enjoy these. So I'm listening to it without that processing applied. So even with it here, it still feels like the soundstage is a lot smaller than this. It doesn't extend as well on the top end for sure. Actually, I just need to check the bass quickly one more time. These do take bass EQ really well, so you can really drive these all the way if you want to have a super bass experience. These, they don't get quite as far, surprisingly. I mean, you can still crank up the bass a lot, and it still sounds good, but the bass heads will probably gravitate towards JVC as usual, because that's what they're known for, and they're still not disappointing. So, yeah, they have their place. Sound quality, I think they're definitely objectively in the lead, but there's something here. Like, it's this smoothness, this lushness and warmth, which I haven't heard with any other IEM. So that might be something attractive for some listeners who want to rein it in, who don't want to listen to all the detail all the time, and want to just relax and mellow out. And there are certain genres and music recordings that work really well with that kind of tuning. It's just not as objectively good as this. All right, let's continue. That's a lot closer. So these are doing some really interesting things, which I mentioned in my last video already, especially with the staging. So it gives you this extra performance, which is why it's not objectively accurate. It's really fun. But it also is backed by an undeniably high quality driver that does give you the detail and the transient response. This is just ever so slightly better because the tuning is more accurate, at least for my ears. Timbre is therefore better, and the imaging, it's just perfect compared to this, which is more diffused. So it's got that fun, weird inverse rear imaging. It's doing something totally different to anything else I've ever heard. Objectively, many aspects of it are far superior to these, but that is just far in the lead. I think if I had to rank them, it'd be something like that on top, then these. Oh, it's difficult. I feel like I want to put these next, but it's like they're there. Technically, these guys have the detail to be here, but the frequency response and the soundstage it's like there. And these are so one-dimensional. Yeah, they're at the bottom. But like, it all depends on your preferences. And you might think these are the best because of the warmth. You might think these are the best because they're the most not the most neutral, most traditionally neutral, with a bit of a treble peak, so kind of reference studio kind of sound. You might think these kind of suck because they don't have that extra performance, or they're not vented, so you get fatigue from those, and you need something like that or something. Well, they're all vented except for this one, I think. Yeah. Don't know if these are vented. Probably. Anyway, whatever. Point is, you gotta keep trying to listen to as much as you can, because you never know what you're going to enjoy. And you can always pick out different things about each one that are spectacular compared to the other ones. Me, I've found close to my end game here. Yeah, anyway, let's continue with the video. As a final footnote, if you love the sound of the The Audio V16 Divinity or the Noble Audio Sultan, but can't afford them, get these and add a bass boost. That'll get you very close to both their tunings, although you will be missing some detail, imaging, and the V16's unique subwoofer-like bass texture. I can only give these my fullest recommendation. Take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.